5 Live Formula One.
What a backdrop we have for our show today. Welcome to Monaco. I'm standing on one of the quays jutting out into the iconic Port Hercule here in Monte Carlo. The music is blaring from the Red Bull Energy Station, and as I look out across the harbour, there are boats galore. A little bit bigger and huge. There are some serious yachts here this weekend, as you might imagine. It is glitz, it is glamour. I'm Rosanna Tennant, less so glitzy and glamorous, but I am joined by an astounding crew of gentlemen. Harry Benjamin, our lead commentator, has really dressed up for the occasion. French Riviera chic for you today, Mr. Benjamin.
Well, I have got to pop to a yacht this evening, and the dress code was coastal chic. So I'm trying my best. I've swapped the shackets for a linen blazer. I feel it's very Monaco.
You look very Monaco. Damon Hill, 1996 world champion, is also with us. Still looking dapper, Damon.
Rosanna, you've done yourself down. You do look wonderful, by the way. So we're all loving each other here. Yeah. I think, Harry, the snorkel and flippers maybe was going too far. What about Jolyon?
You never know. You never know if you might end up in the harbour here or in the swimming pool on the Red Bull Energy Station. Jolyon Palmer is also with us, former Formula One driver. You always look dapper. A sartorial gent, if you might go as far as
what is she after?
I'm just so happy to be here with you guys in this iconic location. This is like no other Monaco, isn't it? It is so special.
It's the best, isn't it? I love coming here for a race weekend. I used to love it as a driver. The track is just outrageous. The fact that we still race Formula One around here is a brilliant novelty. And I love coming here as a commentator now as well. You know, even from the start of practice, you feel like anything can happen at any moment, and it's a lot of fun.
You done any hot laps out there?
No, annoyingly not. No. I haven't done a lap of this place since 2017, and every year I come, I'm like, can I come and do a hot lap? Can I do a feature? Can I do something? Still not.
They're not prepared to damage the Tech Pro and the Armco
exactly.
by sending Palmer out there.
My reputation precedes me.
Yeah, Jolyon, I was so sad for you. I was listening to, I'll say a rival podcast in the lead up to this weekend. They gave you an absolute roasting, replaying your crash here in Monaco. Poor you, haunting times, you said.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a notorious crash of the race, I'd say, because it was right at the start, teeming down with rain. Dingus Palmer here from like 18th just goes and loses it over a zebra crossing and hit the wall on the left, absolute charge down to the barrier at Saint-Devote, and my colleagues love to remind me of it every opportunity. So nice to be here as well with you, Rosanna, and relive it again.
Well, I said I felt sad listening to it.
Well, thanks for the sympathy.
That's all right. That's okay. Damon, it's such a tricky track to get right. You've got to be in the right frame of mind. You've got to find the rhythm, and you've got to find it early doors here, haven't you?
Yeah, it astonishes me how quickly people get on it on this circuit. The pace is relentless. The track improvement, the ramping up of the grip on the circuit is something else. It's something totally different. So you go out, you do what you think is a good lap time. You think that sorted me out. You look at the times. There you are at the top. You come in the pits, make a change, go out, and you're lost. Literally, everyone has gone faster.
Did you have any zebra crossing moments? Any standout memories for you when you come here?
Oh, well, I mean, I had pole position, which has got to be a good standout memory.
Sorry, Jolyon.
Let's start with my haunting times and flick it over to Damon Hill for a pole position.
There's two types of driver here in Monaco. Those that have hit the wall and those that are going to hit the wall. There's nobody gets out alive out of here. You know, everybody of any stature at all has had a crash here in Monaco. It's impossible to get away with it. And you know, you think about Nigel when he was famously leading and he was at wet and he was in the John Player Special Lotus, and you know, tank slapper at top of the hill, that's him, and everyone wrote him off, and then he became world champion. But you know, it does happen to everyone.
You mentioned wet conditions there. The weather might play a part. It's very, I would say, steamy today. Would anyone agree with that description? A little muggy,
bit clammy.
Yeah,
especially
clammy
with
palms.
the blazer on, bit clammy.
You know, you can take it off.
Riviera chic, not looking so good underneath.
What it does do is it then covers up any sweat patches, so you have to sort of stick with it now.
That's a little more information than I'm sure our listeners are.
You've gone past the point of no return in so many ways there, Harry.
Just happy I could provide something.
But it's always got this backdrop. It somehow captures the moisture off of the Mediterranean, so the wind blows it, and then you always get this kind of humidity here, and then sometimes it looks like it's going to rain and it doesn't. So it is a little microclimate place.
But also every year, when you're sort of looking around at the vista that is Monaco, I feel like they squeeze in about 5 more buildings every year than was here previously. great. We've got a longer paddock as well because we had to make room for the Cadillac hospitality. I think every single bit of hospitality has gained another level as well going upwards. It's madness.
It's pretty tight, isn't it, in that paddock? It's pretty tight in the harbour. And Damon, you are actually sleeping out there in the harbour on one of the boats. Tell us what's that like?
I'm not in a little sleeping
I'm
bag.
not only
then,
sleeping in the harbour. I'm in a boat. So
wetsuit.
yeah, I'm actually in one of these. It's not really a boat. It's a ship. It's huge. I mean, it's
a Damon Hill ship,
and it's one of the sponsors of Formula One. Happened to be a cruise company, and you can probably guess who they are. But anyway, they brought one of their cruise ships, and that, of course, has become the kind of residue for all of the people who work in Formula One. So they basically go, we got somewhere to stay. You know, they don't have to go on a bus to Cannes or wherever it is to get in a hotel.
That's where we are, yeah.
So yeah, I did mention.
Yeah,
I thought I'd bring
obviously
that up.
the invite for us was Anna got lost in the post.
I fall out of bed, have breakfast, and then I sort of take 2 steps and I'm in the paddock. How bad does that make you feel?
Bit of
tough,
nighttime
isn't it?
entertainment on the cruise ship.
Entertainment, they've got, yes, apparently they've got classical pianists. I missed her last night, but maybe I'll get her later. But yeah, jugglers, you know, that sort of things.
The weekend is still young, Damon.
Yeah.
Plenty of time to get involved with that. As you have already heard, we've got a stellar lineup here on the show. Coming up, we're going to hear from the championship leader, Kimi Antonelli, his challenging teammate, George Russell. We'll hear from Lando Norris. And, of course, the favourite coming into this weekend. I say, of course, maybe you're not thinking it. Charles Leclerc, obviously a home hero here, the Monegasque driver. All eyes are on him for many reasons, and we'll get into that a little later on in the show. So, as I say, Antonelli leading the standings, 43 points clear of his teammate Russell. Leclerc in third, 3 points ahead of his teammate Sir Lewis Hamilton. Then it's Norris, Piastri and Max Verstappen making up the top 7. Those are the sort of the sharp end players on the grid. We've got big news with brands like Gucci coming into the sports. We'll talk about that. One of our team is very excited about that announcement. You'll find out who later. You might be able to guess.
Is it Andrew Benson?
Loves a loafer, he does. Loves a loafer. But let's talk about the title fight then between Antonelli and George Russell, because it got pretty tasty in Canada. Jolien, you were there, trackside, commentating on it all. It was a bit of a statement of intent maybe from Antonelli. Now we know what he's really about.
He's got minerals, hasn't he? I loved it in Canada. The sprint, I've never seen anyone push so hard for a sprint win. Probably in the whole time that we've had the sprint format, you've not seen risks being taken for the win that Antonelli took. He bounced over the grass 2 or 3 times in a single race. Well, 3 times, in fact, twice with Russell, once then with Norris. And you're thinking this is for 1 point over Russell, and it's your teammate as well, so you're laying down some markers here. He didn't get it done, but I loved his enthusiasm to try and win a sprint that other people, you speak to them in Parc Fermé afterwards and you're trying to inject some cheer into them and they're like, yeah, but the race is tomorrow, let's work on that. So loved it. It was a race that I think we all expected George Russell to turn up and state his claim again for the title, and Antonelli certainly made his life really hard.
He's such a young driver, Damon, youngest driver. He's winning his first 4 races on the bounce, first driver to do that. What have you made of his performance this year so far?
I think, like everyone, I think we've been a bit stunned, actually, quite honestly. He's been really on the pace. He seems to have tidied up his driving, risk-taking, as you'd expect from a 19-year-old, as Jolien was just mentioning there in the races, a few heart and mouth moments, but he managed to keep it clean, and I think that it was the sort of racing that these young guys have been, and girls have been doing since they were 5 years old, you know, down at the kart tracks, and they're taking it to Formula One. And he's got nothing to lose. He's got nothing to lose. That's the thing. He comes here in Monaco and he's got points advantage.
But now I feel like he's got something to lose, though, because he's got a 43-point advantage. So I feel like he's had low expectations. Right. George has been the driver that's... We crowned him, basically, didn't we, in February? You know, Mercedes were going to have this unbelievable car. George was going to be the guy naturally to move up and take the title, but Kimi's suddenly had this turn of pace and consistency, and he's got absolute tenacity. But now I do feel like he's got something to lose, because now there is a realistic shot that he can win the title.
I mean, specifically for Monaco.
Yeah.
You're coming here, you're going to qualifying. Okay, let's say the Mercedes are they're in with a shout of getting on the front row. Kimi can push a little bit harder. George can't afford to make a mistake. Yeah. That's the slight cramp of the style issue for George, I think.
I think we all underrated Kimi Antonelli far too much, because you speak to any of the junior commentators commentating on him coming up through the ranks, and obviously he came up quite quickly, headhunted by Toto for Mercedes. Even Ferrari tried their hand on him at one point, skipped F3 to go into F2, but it was the fact that he's so clinical, yes, raw around the edges, and his first year in Formula One was very up and down. But everyone speaking to the junior commentators who have been watching him, now that he's found his groove, now he's found his rhythm, his comfort with the car, this new generation, that is a Kimi Antonelli to be quite wary of. And the fact he's got this momentum behind him, I think Monaco will definitely be a challenge, because let's face it, it's all about qualifying. However, I think George really has to start finding that extra inch that he's got, that extra tenth of a second. Otherwise, Kimi could well run away with it.
He's under pressure, isn't he, George? It's fascinating you talking about Kimi coming through the ranks, because I remember when he did his first FP1 in Monza in 2024. And I was speaking to Chris McCarthy, who does the Formula 2 commentary, and we were building up, this young Italian, was he 17 at the time?
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, straight into Mercedes, this is huge. And Chris has watched him all the way through his junior formula. So he's done the due diligence on him, and he's like, trust me, this guy is unbelievable. You're going to be stunned with what he can do. And in 2 laps, he put it in the wall. So,
but
so
before
straight
that,
away, we didn't
gone
let
faster
Chris.
than anybody.
Yeah. One amazing
in the first
lap,
2
and
seconds.
then in the wall.
That's the important sequence. You've got to go faster
Yeah.
than anyone before you crash.
But look, Max Verstappen, how many times, I remember in Monaco, back when he was in, a Toro Rosso here, he was crashing into the wall. Everyone was saying he's far too aggressive, he needs to clean up his act. He got a lot of flack, did a young Max Verstappen. And look who he is now, one of the greatest the sport's ever seen.
But he wouldn't have won a title in 2018 because he still made those mistakes. In China, he missed a chance to win. In Monaco here, he missed a chance to win. He wouldn't miss those chances now. He's developed as a driver. And that's the interesting point for me with Kimi is we've seen him being stunningly quick, super aggressive, love the attitude, love the gung-ho, take it to George. But at some point, that will come back to bite. And I feel like Monaco's the sort of track where that'll happen. As you mentioned earlier on, Damon, you always have a crash at Monaco at some point.
Yeah, and I
telling yourself that,
remember...
Julian.
Yeah, we all do, right?
But Max's one was pretty scary, wasn't it? That one, where he went straight on in centre, the first, that was unbelievable. So yeah, it can happen. But, as I said, he's got a little bit of a cushion in that he can, in a way, if he goes out to impress, first of all, he doesn't need to impress us. We expect him to be up there on the sharp end if the car's up to it. He's going to have some other teams to contend with. I mean, I don't think Red Bull are out of it. I don't think that McLaren are out of it. I don't think Ferrari are out of it. So it's going to be tight up the sharp end. But he'll be getting coaching from Toto. He'll be getting all the right advice. But mind you can say all these things to a young driver and they're not listening.
And also, how hard is it to dial it back to 99%? He's obviously just going to want to go full beans, surely.
Yeah.
Chance of winning Monaco Grand Prix, yeah.
It's like Spinal Tap, isn't it? The amp goes up to 12 and you just need to wind it back down to 10. But if you can, some drivers are like that. They can get to 12. Other drivers, they're at 8 and you struggle to get them past that point. But we're interested to find out. It's going to be brilliant watching.
Well, let's hear from Kimi Antonelli. I spoke to him a little earlier on, and I asked him whether he felt that the other drivers on the grid and his teammate George Russell now know a little bit more about how he goes racing and what he's about. This is what he had to say.
I'm not thinking about championship or anything like that. I just think about enjoying the driving as much as I can, and try to do my best, trying to improve, raise the bar, and then we'll see where we end up. But definitely I really want to enjoy as much as possible every weekend, and I want to leave the weekend and say I did everything I could. So that's what I'm going to do.
Last year, obviously, there were a few whispers about whether you were going to live up to the expectations of Toto and Mercedes. Do you feel that George now knows what you're about, Formula One now knows what you're about, and I guess all the other racers know how you now go racing and what to expect? Yeah,
I mean, what I try to do is, I'm not the kind of guy who backs down. Whenever I have an opportunity, I will go for it. And I think in Canada, it was a really good battle with George, but I also showed that no matter the position I am in the championship, I'm going to go for it. And so, of course, there will be time where I will need probably to race a bit more, thinking a bit more about how I go racing. And probably in some occasion I will have to be satisfied with the position I am. But at the moment, I'm just going for it. Of course, I need to learn. I'm learning how to manage this aggressiveness as well, because I cannot just go all out and just go for it 100% and see what happens. Of course, I want to still race hard but smart, but definitely I'm not the kind of guy who backs out.
That was your championship leader, Kimi Antonelli, talking about not backing down, which I guess you just have to have as your mindset. Sorry, a bit of Crazy in Love. My feet can't stop tapping. Harry Benjamin, I think you're having
It's the second
some sort
time
of
they've
reaction.
blasted Crazy in Love. They're loving it at Red Bull.
Beyonce Benjamin, there we go. He's obviously got his elbows out. His teammate George Russell is going to feel those pointy elbows, I think, the most out of everyone on the grid this year. So how does George approach this? It's a tricky one. I think he almost felt this championship was going to be his from the off. It looked that way in Australia, and obviously things have changed. But do you just have to wipe the slate clean after every race and approach it as a fresh start?
Yeah, exactly that. He has to just rebuild. I think he can take some solace from Lando last year, who had this similar difficult run and obviously managed to turn it around in the long haul and win the championship. But he actually did well in Canada. He was obviously really unlucky. So he was winning the race, had battery failure and lost a potential win. It might have been second place. But it was more the way for me that he'd been in Miami, been beaten pretty comfortably by Kimi, and we all expected George to be winning in Montreal, and it was very close. Even if he was winning, it was super close. So I think he's trying to alleviate the pressure from himself, but as you say, Damon, as well, you're 43 points behind. In a way, that makes things just so much more sharper in focus, because anything else that goes wrong here and the gap suddenly looks like it's unrecoverable.
Yeah, that is the big problem. That's the weight on George's mind, I would think, is that he knows he cannot carry on dumping loads of points to Kimi. So he's got to start turning this around. And as you said, I think the pace is there. He may have to find another level in himself, I think, to beat Kimi. Quite apart from the fact that he's got the experience and he's got all that going for him. We haven't seen the peak of Kimi. Kimi's like something you plant in the garden, and you never know quite how big it's going to get. You know, he's a little shoot at the moment. That's all he is.
Well, let's hear from George Russell. He's very keen to point out all of the stats and the data from years gone by of drivers who've gone on to win the championship and the troubles they had in the season before that. So let's hear what he had to say. I asked him if he was also going to be dealing with a psychologist or working with a psychologist or a philosopher even to try and get this championship over the line.
I mean, these things always balance themselves out at one point. And as you say, I've got nothing to lose. I'm just going to go out, enjoy every single race, and it's still in my control. You know, if you pole and win every single race from now until the end of the season, you'll win the championship. So that is my goal. Of course, it was frustrating in Canada, but that's part of racing. It can't always be sunshine and glory.
I was listening to a podcast with Nico Rosberg on it the other day, and he was talking about what he had to do to beat Lewis in 2016, working with a psychologist, a philosopher. Are you working with anyone, or are you going to work with anyone to manage this situation, which could obviously eventually end up with you winning your maiden title?
Yeah, well, I think he was maybe ahead of his time in that regard. I think, I've been working with a performance psychologist for 6 years now. So this has been very much part of my standard routine, and I know at least half the drivers are doing the same. So, the truth is, I'm going about this season as if it's any other season, because I'm taking it race by race, and that's what leads to the end goal. And I sort of read this quote, I think it was like from Will Smith or something like this. It was super random. He said when he was a kid, he was trying to build this wall with his dad, and it looked so daunting, the size of his wall, and his dad just said, just lay brick by brick, and by the end you build a wall. And that's the same, you do it brick by brick, day by day, race by race, then you can achieve that long-term goal. So that's for me. Tomorrow's practice, go out there, drive as fast as possible. Saturday, do the same. And if I do that every single day I'm in the race car, I can then achieve what I want to achieve.
That was George Russell speaking to me a little earlier on in the media pen. Damon, I think we're going to have to release you, because we've just heard that bingo is starting on the cruise ship. So you've got to make a dash for it. Don't want to miss that.
I love bingo.
Yeah. Legs 11 and all that. Hurry. Great to have you. We'll hear from you over the weekend. David Hill, 1996 world champion. And you know what? We've got a like-for-like film here. We've got the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson, ready to take on the baton. Andrew, great to see you in Monaco. Looking dapper. Where is the linen suit, however?
I'm not wearing, was it Mediterranean chic? You said you were wearing
Coastal chic. Coastal chic, Benson.
Yeah, and the luxury brand, I can't afford that, I'm afraid, on my salary.
He'll take freebies, though. Oh, I say. Great to have you with
Definitely
us.
no freebies allowed.
I know. Don't you? I know the rules. We've been talking about
HR, here we go.
Harry's going to have to get undressed.
Please no.
Goodness me. We've been talking about Kimi Antonelli and George Russell, of course, because they are the ones to beat this year. But Antonelli, first and foremost, of course, as the championship leader. What have you made of their battle? The body language this weekend, are you starting to read into it already?
Well, there's already some sort of psychology and kidology going on. I went to the George Russell's sort of media briefing that he does with the British media. There's 5 or 6 of us go generally every Thursday at a Grand Prix. And he said, it's Kimi's to lose now, the championship. And then we went to see Antonelli and he's like, I don't give any weight to that line at all. How can I lose something I've not won yet? So one's putting pressure on the other. They're both saying they're not feeling any pressure. So it's really getting quite tasty. The only problem is that there's a 43-point gap between Antonelli and Russell. And the way Antonelli's driving this year, that's not going to be easy to make up. Obviously, Norris did it on Piastri last year, and Russell was talking about, he used that as an example. He was talking about lots of historic motor racing examples where people have had bad luck and lost championships as a result, like Hamilton, for example, in 2007, Alonso in 2012. He mentioned both of them. But also times when people have come back, like Norris last year, for example, and also Verstappen in 2022 against Charles Leclerc. So it's always interesting in these situations, Jolene, isn't it, to see the psychology between the drivers and the way they try to heap the pressure on themselves while trying to give the impression of being sort of very nice chaps and not playing any of those silly games at all.
You always turn up with something in your head that you want to get across to the media whenever you're having these media briefings. And I do think for George, he has been, like I said already, he's sort of been burdened with the pressure of everyone thinking he's going to be champion. So even if you take Canada as the example, we all expected him to go and win because he'd won the year before, he'd been on pole the year before that, and he didn't. But he was winning. He had taken pole, he won the sprint, and he had taken sprint pole. But the fact that it was even close meant that it felt like he was having a losing weekend, just because it was close and we all expected better from him. But in fact, technically, he was doing everything that he needed to do, and that's the difficult thing. I feel like there is a part of him that's facing pressure that's difficult because he's not racing the same Kimi Antonelli as last year. Antonelli's grown as a driver to be really formidable, quick, consistent, and a potential champion. This time last year, when we all thought that George would be the champion, wasn't the case.
It's a true test for George, though, isn't it? But you talk about comebacks, though. I mean, look at last year with Max Verstappen. Yeah, he didn't ultimately do it, but he came back from a much bigger deficit than 43 points. And including this weekend, we've got 4 races in the next 5 weeks. So having had this sort of kind of stop-start nature to the beginning of the season, I feel like now is the moment where you've got to start picking off points if you're George Russell, even though you are behind. But he can take solace from overcoming such deficits.
Yeah, I mean, I think Canada was a really interesting weekend because, as Jolene says, Russell on paper did everything right, but there was definitely nothing set in stone about that victory. Antonelli was all over him in both the sprint and the Grand Prix, and you could make an argument that as a consequence he was the faster driver. He looked faster until Russell did that final pole lap in qualifying on Saturday. So yes, Russell can take solace from being in front, but at the same time he might be thinking, actually, maybe I should have been further in front. So I would imagine, I don't know what Jolene thinks about this, but I would imagine as a racing driver, some of those thoughts might have been gnawing at him a little bit, even if he won't want to entertain them too much.
Yeah, I think so, because also the way that he dealt with the Miami weekend, I didn't love it from George's point of view. He sort of wrote it off from the first moment, saying it's not really my track, Kimi's always been good here, which meant that the next track, when you know it is his track, you expect the roles to be reversed, and it wasn't. I think that's the uncomfortable part of it, but it's all about getting back to an even keel for George and trying to just find his mojo, find the best form. And I think the difference is when you talk about the Verstappen comeback last year, Harry, they're in the same team. So chipping away at someone that's your teammate is difficult.
Well, On that though, is there something? Say you're the racing driver, you're George Russell, you're Kimi Antonelli. The Toto Wolff scenario to this side of things. He's obviously he's had a hand in both of their careers in managing them as well. He's got two drivers going for it. If you're George Russell, are you starting to think? Are you letting those thoughts creep in of favouritism or vice versa?
I don't think there's been any case of favouritism yet. And maybe you're, in the back of your mind, you're wondering, Toto went out of his way to go and sign Kimi, promoted him super quickly. The story of Kimi being a world champion at 19 would be reflect really well on Toto, wouldn't it? But as you said, George is also a protege of Mercedes, so he's not like he's a signing from elsewhere either. And the only moment really that we've seen Toto get on the radio and intervene was in Montreal.
As George actually walks behind us, being flanked by fans.
He missed your question.
George, quick question.
Do I look chic?
Coastal chic or not?
Well, I mean, we've got some changes this weekend. So is this a weekend where George could be on top? I feel like they are definitely not favourites. Let's talk about the changes that we're going to see with these new cars around the track.
So, yeah, quite a few things are different this weekend from the other races so far. So no straight line mode, for example. That means the wings don't open on the straights. Then there's various settings.
There aren't that many.
Yeah, because there aren't that many. And there are various settings in the engine that are a bit different. I think more importantly, though, I think, at least for myself, I think this could be the closest, most competitive weekend of the year, because Ferrari are expected by everybody to be right up at the front. Everyone's been talking them up. McLaren were very strong in Miami, and their car's been particularly good in slow speed corners, which this track has a lot of. So you could see both of those things close the gap a little bit on Mercedes. So Ferrari don't have the engine deficit here, for example, that they have everywhere else, because this is the least power sensitive circuit, as they describe it in Formula 1, which means the engine makes the least difference on lap time. So it could be really close, but quite often with these things where people think that things are going to close up, it's not quite like that. And actually, Ferrari's deficit to Mercedes on average this year over one lap is half a second nearly. And that's a lot to change just on circuit characteristics. But having said that, I do think it'll be a really close fight for pole.
And is it also going to be more exciting, Julian? These cars are much more nimble, they're smaller. I know you've been frothing at the mouth since Bahrain's testing sessions. When you saw them out on track, I know you were thinking, gosh, I can't wait to get to Monaco to see them throw it around that track.
I've been really excited for Monaco because the big thing here is it's not going to be an energy management challenge. I mean, that's what all the drivers have been looking forward to as well. I saw the cars when they first hit the ground in Bahrain, and they look good through the corners. They are nimble, they're less downforce, they're shorter wheelbase, they turn in a little bit sharper, they're more of a handful, which is fun. Obviously, there's been elements through the first part of the year, especially the start of the year, where energy management was sort of an overriding feature, which is not what you want to do as a driver. You want to go flat out all the time and go as fast as possible. All of that means that this race is going to be great for them. And it's going to change the pecking order slightly as well, because there is no energy management. It's flat out driving. In terms of driving styles, maybe that'll favour some over others that don't have to consider slowing down into corners, the way they apply the throttle. These things, they can get back to basics. And yeah, I mean, Monaco anyway at the best of times is brilliant, but I do think these cars, it's going to look great when they hit the track.
It's always thrilling here, and of course it's the most thrilling on a Saturday because of the qualifying session having such huge importance, because it's tricky to overtake. But we've got 22 cars lining up on the grid, or at least taking part in Q1. So traffic management is going to be vital, and we actually had drivers earlier on in the press conference talking about how radios, actually it was Lando Norris, wasn't it? It was current world champion, saying how people need to use their radios in the right and proper way this weekend to basically get out of the way if they're on a hot lap.
Yeah, well, two extra cars than what we're used to seeing. But you know what? They have Formula 3, Formula 2 here, which has a bigger field. They were even talking, I think, in the press conference about should they split Q1 into groups, weren't they? But I don't think that was settled on. But particularly in qualifying, because ultimately there ain't much overtaking on Sunday. That's where the race result is most nailed on. So it is going to have a huge factor, mainly in Q1. So it's going to be about that relationship between driver and the communication between driver and who's on the pit wall. Interestingly, the pit wall is obviously sort of inside above the team garages. So it's not like they're sat in the usual position overlooking the start-finish straight. Sometimes the GPS can be a bit funny around here as well. But ultimately, a driver has to use his mirrors. The mirrors are tiny. somebody is going to get blocked, many people are going to get blocked, and all of a sudden you've got someone on the wall, a red flag, there's not enough time to get out, and you've got drivers out of position that way who haven't managed to get their lap in the bag, which is why Saturday is always a spectacle in Monaco.
Can't wait, cannot wait for it. Sort of quietly been dropped, that 2 pit stop rule from last year, hasn't it?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, no one's really chatting about it too much, but it's gone. It is gone. Also going gone is Julian Palmer. What a sadness. We're losing you now at this part of the show.
And you built me up and then crushed me down so early on.
I had limited
going to
time.
bingo as well.
I've gone, no, Damon Hill's going to bingo in the piano recital. I'm going to get my Mazda down to downtown Montauk in my little hotel that's probably half the size of his cruiser.
Oh, well, look, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bon soirée. We'll see you over the course of the weekend, and let's hope it's a great one. Julian Palmer making way then for Dutch broadcaster Nelson Valkenburg. Fantastic to have you joining us on the show. This is a real who's who, this show. I can't believe it.
That's what you get with Monaco, right? The who's who.
It's
of
glitz and
broadcasting.
glamour.
How much is the budget for this podcast?
We've spent it all. There's no
You're
supper for
here,
us
so it's all
tonight.
gone.
It's all gone on my jacket.
Yes, and what a great spend that was. Nelson, we've been talking about Mercedes. We sort of almost ruled them out as favourites coming into this weekend because the sort of hot topic has been Ferrari coming into the Monaco Grand Prix. Of course, they've got the home hero of Charles Leclerc. We can talk about his contract signing. Were you expecting that, especially after the weekend he had in Canada?
It does make sense when you think about it, because where is he going to go? What are the imminent options for him? And he clearly identifies himself with that team. And we also know that any contract has binding and non-binding parts, and there are potential outs. So I think for him it works to have a long-term contract that's in the 2030s. We might hear 2031, 32, something like that. So it makes sense for him, but he needs a good weekend here.
Andrew, did you see it coming, the re-signing? I mean, it just feels like they haven't really got going, the Ferrari team this year. Should he have waited a little longer?
I didn't see it coming, but because I thought he was contracted to the end of next year, which I think was the case. But I'm told that there was potential ways for him to get out this year if certain things had gone a certain way. So that makes sense in that sense from Ferrari's point of view to tie him down. And Nelson's absolutely right. There's not really a lot of options for him in the sense that Antonelli and Russell are locked in at Mercedes, and the only person who's going to get one of them out of there is Max Verstappen. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are locked in at McLaren, and if you're at Ferrari, where else would you go, basically? However, I think the concern for Charles Leclerc is he's been at Ferrari since 2019. He's won 8 Grand Prix in, is it 8 years nearly? That's not a great return for someone who most people in this paddock believe is probably the fastest driver over one lap. And I think there's a concern that he could just end up never winning a championship, because he's been talking about believing in the Ferrari project for as long as I can remember, and he's talking about that again today. But when is his project actually going to deliver? This was going to be another year where Ferrari started with positivity and hope and optimism, and they've underdelivered yet again, like they've done every year since 2007 effectively. So that's the concern for Leclerc.
And there's another problem. He's starting to have difficulties with Lewis within the team, and that's a new sensation for him. Lewis is definitely very, very comfortable at the moment, and this weekend is going to prove very interesting to see where Lewis stacks up compared to Charles Leclerc. And he's clearly still the number one driver in that sense. He's basically part of the family there and part of the furniture, but if he's not always the fastest, it's another problem there for him.
Leclerc is a specialist around these streets that he grew up on, of course. Let's hear from the Monegasque driver, having signed an extension to his contract with Ferrari. We asked him sort of why he believes in the project and what's led him to put pen to paper yet again.
I mean, it was very clear. I mean, I love the team. I think that's pretty obvious from the outside. It's been 8 years with the Formula 1 team, 10 years with Ferrari as a whole. They've been one of the first people to believe in me and to help me to get to where I am today. And I believe in the project most of all. I think with Fred we have a very, very good relationship, and I strongly believe that he's the person that will be able to bring Ferrari back to the top. It's been a good start of the season. Obviously not as good as what we will want because we want to target the World Championship, but there's been a lot of innovation on the car, and I think, we know where we are lacking, and that's probably more the engine side. We've got a plan coming up, and hopefully it will help us to get back to where we want to be. But why? It's because I love this team and because I believe in the project, and for these two reasons, that's why we continue together.
So that was Charles Leclerc talking about his freshly inked new contract with Ferrari. Harry, he was talking about the love for the team, and I guess a lot of people here just only see Charles Leclerc in red. It almost feels right that he's extended, but could it just be the wrong thing for his career?
I'm sure he was probably imagining himself in Gucci for next year, maybe, but ultimately I don't think that's going to prove any better. What I find interesting is all the points Andrew Nelson made absolutely valid, but the point of difference for Charles Leclerc over these years has been who's the boss at that team, and he seems to have pure faith in Fred Vasseur and where he's leading that team. And, Vasseur hasn't exactly had an easy ride over the last couple of years. First year seemed to do okay. Second year, suddenly questions around this time are creeping in about will he continue with Ferrari? Then he's back for another one. Hamilton absolutely adores him, has got on well with him since he ran ART and GP2 years ago. So I think that is a defining factor here for Charles Leclerc, is that he clearly has trust, not only in Ferrari, but the fact it's Fred Vasseur at the helm of that team. And I think what has been also interesting to see is that I think historically Ferrari in a season have been a bit scared to bring big upgrades, innovate. We're talking all about this spinny rear wing, and they were one of the first to come with it. They were the first to come with it, and I feel like that's not normally a Ferrari thing to do. They'd be on the back burner a fair bit, and they'd rather just not fail and not try and fail rather than try something and fail. So I think that is a step forward for them, and maybe that's the things Leclerc needs to see to keep him signed on.
I guess another thing Charles Leclerc needs to see, and of course Lewis Hamilton as well, is a win, and this weekend could be their greatest chance this season to mark up a win on the board. You're sort of nodding along, Nelson. Do you think that because of all the changes that we've spoken about on the show so far, with some of the sort of neutering effects of all the energy deployment and the like around the track this weekend, do you think therefore they've got the advantage?
Well, there is definitely an advantage for Ferrari. The drivability of that engine is quite good. The smaller turbo means that you have, some more manageable kicks up the backside, stuff like this. And the drivability will be very, very important come Saturday, which is, in my book, I think, Harry, for you, the best day of the year, Saturday here in Monaco. And this chassis is quite nimble. It is very, let's say, very pointy. We've seen always a Ferrari go through its rear tires, but that's not going to be an issue here on the Saturday. And if there is a track where they can take the very strong end that this Ferrari has to an advantage, the smaller turbo as well, and as you say, the neutering of the Mercedes advantage with the compression ratio, it could come together for them, especially on the Saturday here. But then I'm still not completely convinced it's going to be Charles Leclerc, because I just have this inkling that Lewis is doing so well.
You're taking my question. I was going to say, come on then, choose Leclerc or Hamilton.
I would choose Hamilton right now, and I may lose a lot of money, but that's what Monaco's built upon, on
the casino's
taking
just
bets.
over there.
Yeah, exactly. Walk there afterwards. But I agree with everything else I said. But to come back to what Andrew said, they do still have a deficit. But I think if anywhere that can be overcome, it's probably at a circuit like this where a driver can really make the difference. And they've got two drivers who are pretty good. One is incredibly good around Monaco in the form of Charles Leclerc, at home as well, fueled by that kind of power too, with
and
a chance.
Pressure, a little bit of pressure.
But he broke his duck, didn't he, a couple of years ago, where he finally started a race and actually won it. And then you've got Lewis Hamilton, who is pretty good as well, around Monaco, a street circuit ace too. So I think I'm with Nelson. There's a good chance if they can hook qualifying up right and optimise the session. That'll be the key, getting an optimal session in qualifying, clean laps. I don't see
We've got
why
Rodin the
they can't
thinker
win.
here, just planning his response. Andrew
But then
Benson.
McLaren will also be there, Mercedes probably too as well.
What do you want me to talk about? Sorry, Rosanna. Ferrari and Leclerc and Hamilton.
He's just loving the Bruno Mars. I knew he wasn't listening. No, do you think it would be a Leclerc or a Hamilton win if indeed Ferrari do have the advantage?
It's a really interesting question. There's no question that Hamilton's been in better form this year so far. It's 4-all in qualifying. Hamilton was at 6s and 7s last year. And he was talking again today about how important it was, the work that he'd been doing behind the scenes to get the team to work together in the way that he wants them to work together. He's been talking up how he's been able to have his input into this year's car design, which I know was something he used to talk about at Mercedes, and they used to sort of roll their eyes a little bit at it.
Likes his engineering team now.
Yes, and he likes his new engineer who he's got this year, who was meant to be a sort of temporary fill-in.
He's stuck about a fair bit, hasn't he?
Well, I don't think the new guy that they intended to replace him with has arrived yet, but it looks like Hamilton's really happy with him. But although it's 4-all in qualifying, Leclerc does still have a small advantage on average pace, and he's so good around here. Now, yes, it's true, Hamilton's also always been so good around here, but Leclerc is really, really so good around here. If you were to ask me to back one of them to be ahead of the other, I would say Leclerc over Hamilton. But does that mean pole position? I don't know. I find it really hard to pick this weekend, because I don't think Mercedes' advantage is going to be overturned quite so easily. The McLaren I expect to be really strong here. Norris is really quick around here, so is Piastri. And if you want me to talk about little technicalities for a while, because of the straight line mode not being here, which we talked about earlier.
A short while.
Yeah. All the rear wings, they've got the opportunity to replace that with little small rear wings in the middle of the rear wing. Everyone's got one, except Ferrari, who seem to have forgotten that rule loophole exists.
Well, I would like to move it on to McLaren then, because they seem a little bit absent from the conversation when it comes to favourites this weekend. Of course, Mercedes, you've got to talk about as the championship leaders. Ferrari seem to have got this favourite status, but McLaren, it's a bit of an unknown. What can we expect from them?
Well,
Lando Norris or Oscar Piastri? Who? If we're going to pick a teammate there?
Here, I'd definitely go for Lando Norris between the McLaren drivers. And what is interesting is we know the Mercedes engine is quite good on drivability, but what does the McLaren package with their gearbox do here as well? They need to bounce back. If there's ever a team that needs a better weekend than last time out, it's going to be McLaren. It's just so weird with McLaren. It's so out of focus, it feels to me. It's always there or thereabouts, but
it's not sharp.
It's not sharp there yet. But this is more about a driver than anything else. How much commitment are you willing to show to go to get the pole position, to actually do what you need to do here? And in that, I would always back Lando. So it's going to be super interesting to see. In effect, it's maybe not about the cars. Saturday is about nerve, about taking the car right up to the guardrail and maybe an inch further, referencing Verstappen a couple of years back. Saturday is going to be about that, and who is mentally able to do this 2-3 times in a row.
But I agree, but will there not be something at the back of any Mercedes-powered driver when they're going around a track where we've had a few engines go pop, batteries failing? George Russell last time out, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, back in China. So I just wonder if that reliability question is going to creep in occasionally, maybe not so much at a track like this, but it's a question you have to think at the back of your mind.
Well, it's for the Sunday very important. When every little rattle, everything you hear, you start to think, oh, it's going to stay together. But don't forget, a lot of Red Bull engines have had issues. A lot of Audi engines have had issues. It's not just Mercedes. It's just very obvious when they're in the lead.
I quite like that in a way, like that we've got reliability issues rearing their head again in Formula One, because I feel like we were bulletproof for a whole generation, and you'd have a full classification. Yeah. Now, usually one car won't make the start of the race, and then we'll have 7 out by the time we're halfway through.
And half of them are in the pit lane for the start. But to the point, you don't think about this when you're doing qualifying, because you really just... You're in the zone. You need to be in the zone. And you'll see this, they'll practice this in FP3. And already they take way more risks than they would normally do. I just don't think on Saturday the car will matter as much than the mental side of it, and who will be standing up to the challenge of Monaco Best.
So it's the nerve of the drivers, it's the reliability of the car, it's also the strategy and how the team execute the perfect weekend. In Canada, I mean, the choice to start on the intermediate tyres, that was a gamble. It did not pay off, as we all saw, as they saw. Do you think they're able to tighten up that sort of execution element of their weekend, Andrew?
Well, I think they need to, because there's been a sort of consistent series of mishaps, if you like, on various sort of logistical, organisational, strategic, whatever you want to call it, aspects from McLaren. If we go back to last year, indeed, like Qatar, for example, when they messed up the strategy, they did it in Miami. They let Antonelli in for the win there, where if they'd kept track position by pitting Norris first, he probably would have won the race. And then it happened in Canada with the tyre choice, which I got a lift back to the airport with the Mercedes engineers and a couple of other people in Montreal, and they couldn't believe what McLaren had done. And I was showing them the justifications that McLaren had used for making that decision, and they were like, well, that's not true.
Is it overthinking, do you think?
I just don't know. To me, it made no sense. One car, yes, okay,
that's what
make
made
the gamble.
it worse.
But that's the same with Qatar. Do it with one car. Just do it with one car. Have a go.
It was raining a little bit, but it was basically dry.
But it was the Piastri argument over the radio back and forth on the second formation.
It's not like the drivers hadn't been warned. The team hadn't been warned. Yeah. So it just... I'm sure they'll have gone back over it in the factory as to how that happened, but they need to stop it keep happening, I think, is the main thing.
And here, it's so important. If something happens, you need to be able to react straight away and be bold with your decision-making.
Well, McLaren has a tendency to be too cerebral, to overthink, to be the most clever kid in the classroom.
Sounds just like me.
Well, there's an opening maybe at McLaren soon. You never
they've
know.
got so many people joining, there's no room.
But you just sometimes have to go with your gut feeling and be a racer and just, as you say, be decisive and bold. And yes, it was very bold in Montreal, but when the writing was on the wall, they were not decisive. And in this, the blame is also a little bit on Piastri from my side, because if Piastri knew it was wrong, you force the issue a little bit. And that's not what happened. But I think it's just ingrained. You saw it with papaya rules last year. They overthink everything, and that then becomes a little bit of a problem. Just F1 has a tendency to make the easy stuff very complicated, and McLaren are maybe world champions in that sometimes.
Well, let's hear from Lando Norris and hear how he's feeling coming into this weekend, a race that they really need to get the most out of with both cars.
I think our run into this weekend, this time last year, was probably a little bit better than we've had this year. So maybe not quite to the level it was last season, but I think we're optimistic. We still want to come in with hopes of trying to achieve a pole and trying to achieve a win. That's still the goals we want to set ourselves. But Ferrari and Mercedes have obviously been very strong. Mercedes even more so. So. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. We don't want to be too optimistic, but at the same time, we want to come into weekends at the minute. I think we've given ourselves the chance to come into weekends with the belief that it's possible, and that's the way we want to stay for now.
And when you look at your car's characteristics, do you think the nature of Monaco will suit it?
It's just so tough to say. I think we were closer to pole this year in Montreal than we were last time in Montreal when we had a more dominant car. We went on to win in a similar characteristic of track, slow speeds, low grip track that we have here. So, when you just think of those things, we want to kind of gives us confidence. When you think of various other things like just our general performance this year, less so. But we also know where we stand comparing to the other cars, where they're fast, where they're not. It's true that the Ferraris are not the quickest in the straights, but that's also because they have a lot of downforce and a lot of drag. So it's kind of their own punishment they give themselves, which gives them some advantage, and that advantage will definitely show this weekend.
Okay, and final one from me, Lando. It's McLaren's 1,000th race. Only the second team to reach that milestone. You've done the most starts of any driver for McLaren. Just how proud are you of the part you've played in the team's history?
Very. I mean, my dream was to be in F1 in the beginning, was to be with McLaren. I don't think at any point I ever thought I'd be the driver in McLaren with the most race starts for them. That's a pretty awesome stat to think of. To be honest, normally I hate stats in general, and I hate when people say them, but this is one that I'm just proud of for sure. It's not like a performance stat, it's just more like a general one, and that's something, to see my name alongside so many greats. I know one championship is pretty amazing, but a lot of others and a lot of the people that everyone knows and remembers achieved a lot more, and I certainly want to get to the level that they did. But for my name to be amongst some incredible drivers in the past is an amazing thing. For me to play a small part in helping McLaren go from where they were a few years ago, which is where no one wants to see McLaren, to where we are now, has been an incredible journey that I've been very lucky to be part of. So. I'm a lucky boy, and I'll be here for many more years at the same time, trying to keep McLaren in the position that they are now, which is winning constructors championships, winning championships for drivers, and I know how lucky I've been to be part of that journey, and I hope that it continues for many more years.
That was your reigning world champion, Lando Norris, on McLaren's 1000th Grand Prix weekend. Wowee. Harry, you look like you've done 1000 Grand Prix. You're looking tired and lethargic. Come on.
Yes, we've been stood out here for an hour, Rosanna.
Right.
The linen jacket's really taken a beating.
Poor Harry.
Glass
He's in the
half
Monaco
empty.
harbour, blue skies.
We've got a yacht party
boat
to
parties
get to.
around.
Yeah.
I mean, what a setting we've given you, and you are just so hard to
But,
please.
you know, a chair wouldn't go amiss.
You are
The
right.
fame's going to his head, Rosanna. It must be.
We are stood on the most beautiful quay looking out over Port Hercule here in Monte Carlo. The sun is behind clouds, so it's a little cooler than it was, but it's been beautiful here, and quite a lot of fans here already soaking up the atmosphere, trying to see drivers as they wiggle through the paddock and try not to fall into the harbour that is absolutely jam-packed with super yachts, as you might imagine. We're expecting the celebrities this weekend. The grid will be packed. It's going to be a glorious weekend off track, and I'm hoping on track as well. We've spoken about the big hitters. We've got to include Max Verstappen in that conversation, Nelson. We are outside the Red Bull Energy Station at the moment, but how are you finding Max this season when you talk to him? Obviously, with the Dutch media, is he a little different? What are you getting from your side of things?
It is very dependent on how the day goes for him right now. He's wearing his heart on his sleeve, even more so than he used to, somehow. But he's been very clear about regulations, etc. But then, if you add in a bad weekend, it becomes a little bit more testy for him. Very black and white sometimes, but you can't really find fault in the commitment, and that's what he's going to need on the Saturday. What I'm a little bit worried about, and Andrew, maybe you'll have a similar feeling, is the drivability of that Ford engine could provide some hairy moments in qualifying for Red Bull.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm worried about it. I mean, look, Max is amazing, isn't he? And let's not forget, 3 years ago, he put in one of the great all-time pole laps here to snatch pole, and therefore the win as a result. So, you know, no one's talking about Red Bull as potential winners, are they, Nelson? But with him in the car, you're just never quite sure. We haven't got a quite clear picture of exactly where Red Bull are, because they're fluctuating a bit this season. But this is a sort of race track where if they can get the car in the right window, he can really come alive.
Well, it's the bumps and the curbs, though, isn't it, that I think are the rearing their head again for Red Bull and Verstappen. And I think that is what kind of hindered them in Canada as well. They got lucky, let's face it, in the race to be on the podium. So they didn't have, it was great battling with Lewis Hamilton, but they didn't have the pace to sort of be there on merit. So I think and the bumpy nature of Canada, the track as well, trying to change the setup, which then to tweak the ride height, but then that falls out of the window to get the tyres warmed up. It's finding that balance throughout this weekend that I think could be another issue for Red Bull.
And it is quite bumpy out there.
Just a bit, yeah.
And he was very disappointed about the fact that it's still in Red Bull's DNA.
Yeah, that's the bigger issue.
Yeah,
isn't it?
and he really, really was angry in Montreal. So yeah, just see how that continues. If he struggles here in FP1 or 2, then the interviews become very interesting, because he's starting to draw a line in the sand with Red Bull. I feel like about this problem that's been there since, I believe, 2023. I think that's the first time he really started noticing the car not behaving the way he wanted over bumps. And he was very clear in Montreal what he thought about it. So let's see here.
And of course, he's been giving little hints about his future, whether he will or won't stay in the sport. It sounds more positive at the moment that he'll stay. You're nodding your head, Andrew. You don't expect him to leave the sport anytime soon, do you?
I don't, but I don't know where he's going to be next year if he does stay.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure.
This is where the merry-go-round of drivers begins, isn't it? Silly season.
Yeah.
Half the grid's out of contract.
What I mean by that is he's under contract to Red Bull till the end of 2028, but he definitely will be able to leave unless they have some kind of miraculous turnaround in performance. Because of a performance clause in his contract, he will be able to leave at the end of this season. if he's able to leave and he goes to Toto Wolff and says, I want to come and drive for you, is Toto Wolff going to be able to resist that temptation? I mean, it all gets a bit sticky because the Mercedes drivers' contracts, they should be locked in given how competitive their car is, but
no contract is locked in.
Exactly,
what we've
this is Formula One. Anything can be moved if people want it enough.
And the same goes for McLaren, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it could get really tasty. I think my feeling is Verstappen wants to stay. He's encouraged by the fact that they're trying to change the rules for next year, so the engines are a little bit less sort of energy starved by changing the ratio between internal combustion engine and electrical power. It's going in the right direction. So he's making the right noises about staying in Formula One, but that doesn't mean he's going to stay at Red Bull.
But also, he's getting a lot from Red Bull kind of outside the car as well. They're sponsoring and funding his GT racing, slapping Red Bull all over the car, allowing that to happen, and allowing that to happen anyway as well in his contract.
But he's driving a Mercedes in those GT races. So
didn't he drive a Ferrari
Mercedes would not want him to.
Yes, but if you're Zach Brown and you have this beautiful new Le Mans hypercar that you could also run in Daytona, and you say, well, I can give you a couple of GT3s, plus you can do all the endurance races you want, and all my sponsorship dollars are multiplied by having you on my team. Zach Brown is a deal maker. I wouldn't rule it out. There is no sign that discussion is happening, but stranger things have happened in this paddock.
And plus we forget, obviously, the news that GP, his race engineer, will be going to McLaren at some point by 2028. That is not insignificant. No matter what they've said, it's not insignificant. That relationship coming to an end, is that a natural time for Verstappen to depart?
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't know any of this.
No, this is all pure conjecture.
It's the sort of thing, but having said that, Toto Wolff's been trying to get Max Verstappen for 2 years now. It's hard to see him resisting that temptation if the door opens again, let's put it that way.
But we were so hot and bothered last year when he was on Toto's yacht for a couple of hours. And probably in the end it was about getting a few GT3s for the Nordschleife. Yeah. So, I mean, we can fall into the trap every year, and I think it's a waiting game, and we'll just wait and see.
We've got to get excited about things, haven't we? It's what we do. Well, this falls nicely into the sort of rumour mill segment of the show. Perhaps some quick-fire questions and answers on what we've heard. Cadillac not happy with Bottas? Is he going to be out mid-season?
I don't believe that at all.
Nah, it's not happening. But he does need to improve his performance in comparison to Perez, because Perez has had a good couple of races on the trot and Bottas hasn't been anywhere.
Christian Horner coming back to Formula One with BYD.
That's absolute nonsense.
I've been shut down on that rumour mill moment. Okie dokie.
I'd like to see a 12th team though. And I think Formula One needs big personalities back in the game. I think we've lost a few too many over the years.
Okie dokie.
Horner's doing his level best to keep himself in the news at the moment, but there's no prospect of him coming back with BYD. What's interesting is the Alpine situation. So there was a story on the BBC Sport website that we did last week about Toto Wolff and Mercedes pulling out of wanting to buy that team because they thought that the people who own the American Otro company, who have got 24% of that team, have overpriced it effectively. And Renault have now ended any talks about that sale, but Renault only have a veto over the sale of those shares until September. What happens after that, we don't know. Renault don't want Horner anywhere near that team, but from September onwards, they can't stop it. Well, at least in theory, they can't. Whether the parent company would be very happy about him being back in the scenario, even if Otro did want to sell to the consortium that he has allegedly put together, we don't know, and how that would work out. But for now, that's all gone quiet.
Feels like your summer break is going to be spent sniffing out that story, Andrew.
I really hope not, Rosanna.
Bahrain and Saudi returning at the end of the year to reshuffle the schedule.
I've heard something about this.
Okay, so I can tell you about this. So obviously it all depends on the war. There's a tentative plan to put Bahrain in between Baku and Singapore if it's possible. But changing the end of the season is much more difficult. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix date is basically locked in. They don't want to move that race, that date. It's associated with their national day, which is earlier in the same week. People were talking about moving Abu Dhabi back another week to get Las Vegas, Saudi Arabia in. Abu Dhabi don't want to move at the moment, so getting Saudi in will be much more difficult. But if they can, they will try and squeeze Bahrain in between Baku and Singapore. But if the war carries on, there's even questions about whether Baku can happen, because it's close enough to Iran for it to be a potential target. And it is obviously an American-owned company that owns this sport, so there's a risk there.
Yeah, then contested airspace that you have to cross. What we haven't kept eyes on is that there are all the team kits, including hundreds of sets of tires, still standing at Bahrain Airport. Everything that they had from testing there is still there because they haven't been able to move it. And that is quite interesting. From a global standpoint, I believe also FOM is working with a couple of scenarios for next year, because of course they'd like to start in the Middle East. That is always the plan. After Ramadan for this year is done, the placement of that. But nobody's sure. Nobody's sure what they can do. So imagine trying to make a calendar for F1 for next year. You'll have to have a couple of different plans, including, I would think, a second race in China if the worst case scenario unfolds.
Well, plenty to keep across in the coming months. I want a one driver prediction, please, to win the race this weekend. Harry, I'll start with you.
Lewis Hamilton.
Andrew Benson.
George Russell.
Nelson Muckberg.
Lewis Hamilton.
Whoa.
You can tell who the commentators are and who the journalist is.
Yeah, because we're going to get it wrong. That's definitely true.
Well, you're going to have to join us to find out. I'm going to say George Russell, because he needs a good weekend for the championship to keep it alive. Otherwise, we have a runaway winner, don't we, at this point?
And how about this one? Perez to make Q2.
You know what? Wouldn't be shocked.
No.
Wouldn't
What a
be
cute
shocked.
story.
Yeah.
What a cute story.
Also, hang on, you're winding up. We've not even touched on Gucci.
Well,
You teased us.
Well, yes, true. And guess which team member's most excited about it? Andrew Benson.
I did manage, I'm not really allowed to mention sponsorship stories, but I did manage to shoehorn that into the Alpine story last week, because of course they are going to sponsor Alpine next year. Other fashion brands are available, as are other title sponsors.
And commentators are really excited about how to call all the races with Gucci
I do love a
around the
blazer.
track. Well, Harry, Andrew and Nelson, thank you so much for being the last men standing with me. We've had many contributors over the course of the show. Hopefully you've enjoyed our preview. The race gets underway at 2 o'clock on Sunday, and our coverage will begin at 1:30 on 5 Live. We'll have commentary of all the other sessions on BBC Sounds and the BBC Sport website. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live, but right now we need to head off and find the biggest and the best yacht offering the greatest party, I feel.
Damon's actually just sent that bingo is kicking off and we should all join him.
Two fat ladies, I'm there. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.